The grand ballroom of Buckingham Palace shimmered under a cascade of crystal chandeliers, the soft hum of classical music mingling with the murmur of distinguished guests. Outside, the London night was calm, but inside, tensions were about to ignite in ways no one could anticipate. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, a gathering of royalty and dignitaries. Yet a shadow of intrigue loomed over the glittering halls. At the center of this unfolding drama was Camilla, the queen consort, moving gracefully through the crowd with a calm exterior that barely masked the storm inside. Hidden behind her composed smile was a secret that could shake the very foundations of the royal family. The object of her ambition was none other than the Windsor legacy ring, a priceless jewel valued at $1 million, a treasure that once belonged to Princess Diana. Its significance went far beyond its monetary value. It was a symbol of love, loss, and legacy. And now, Camilla had her eyes set on it for her own purposes. But what exactly was she planning, and at what cost? She intended to use the ring to help her son realize his dream of opening a high-end restaurant. Yet such an audacious move was bound to have consequences that no amount of royal protocol could prevent. Imagine yourself in William's shoes, discovering that your stepmother had reached for a piece of your mother's legacy. How would you react? Shock, anger, or silent restraint? Tonight, we will unravel every detail of that fateful evening, Camilla's daring plan, the royal family's reactions, and the public's inevitable judgment. Camilla's son had long dreamed of opening a restaurant, an ambitious, high-end venture that could secure his future and elevate the family name in unexpected ways. She had been planning this conversation for weeks, rehearsing her words, envisioning a response that might unlock the royal coffers for her cause. And now, standing before Charles, she tried to steady her voice, to keep the perfect balance of charm and urgency. "Charles," she began softly, yet with a note of determination, "I know this may sound bold, but my son's dream is more than just a whim. I want to help him open a restaurant, a place worthy of our family's standard. All I ask is $1 million to make it possible." Her eyes searched his, hoping for a flicker of support, an acknowledgement that he understood the stakes. Charles's expression remained guarded. The familiar furrow of his brow hinted at the conflict beneath. "Camilla, you know we cannot do that," he replied firmly, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "This is not a matter of choice. We cannot use royal funds for personal ventures. It simply cannot happen." His voice was calm but unwavering, a mixture of concern and authority, like a parent delivering a truth that had to be heard even if it caused pain. A flash of frustration crossed Camilla's face. She had anticipated resistance. Yes, but not such an outright refusal. The words settled heavy in the room, a silent verdict that left her momentarily speechless. Yet beneath that initial sting of disappointment, another feeling began to stir, a stubborn resolve that refused to bow. She could feel her heartbeat quicken, her mind turning over possibilities, weighing risks. How far would she go to ensure her son's dream became reality? Charles stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "I understand why you want this, but this is not the way. There are limits to what we can do. Camilla, you must see that." His voice softened, an attempt to temper her resolve. But she sensed the line had been drawn. There would be no compromise, no hand extended to meet her plan. Camilla exhaled slowly, a subtle but deliberate shift in her demeanor. She smiled politely, concealing the storm of emotions inside. Beneath the calm exterior, a seed had been planted, an idea that could circumvent refusal, an audacious plan that no one could have predicted. If royal funds were off limits, perhaps there was another way to secure what she wanted. Her mind lingered on the Windsor legacy ring, a priceless jewel of immense symbolic and monetary value. The ring, valued at $1 million and a cherished relic of Princess Diana, seemed to whisper a daring alternative. If she could acquire it discreetly, it might just provide the solution she needed for her son's restaurant. The thought sent a thrill through her, tinged with danger. As she realized the magnitude of what she was considering, Charles, unaware of the calculation forming behind her eyes, continued to speak, hoping to dissuade her. Camilla, please think carefully. There are consequences to every action. She nodded, appearing compliant, yet internally, her resolve hardened. The conversation had closed one door, but another, far riskier path now beckoned. What began as a simple request for support had evolved into a plan that would set in motion events no one could have foreseen. And as the evening shadows deepened around them, Camilla quietly decided that if Charles would not help, she would have to take matters into her own hands. By the end of that night, a subtle but profound shift had occurred. The royal conversation had planted the spark that would, 5 days later, ignite into a scandal that would reverberate through Buckingham Palace and beyond. The path was clear in her mind. If she could not secure the funds openly, she would secure the Windsor legacy ring. The audacity of it, the risk, the thrill, all mingled into a resolve that would define the coming days. The clock had just struck 8:30 p.m. on September 30th, 2025. Buckingham Palace, usually bustling with formal events and the quiet shuffle of attendants, had settled into an almost eerie stillness. Shadows stretched along the polished floors, and the golden light from the chandeliers gave the halls a warm but deceptive sense of calm. Camilla moved carefully through the corridors, each step measured and deliberate. Her heart thumped in rhythm with the ticking of a distant clock, echoing louder than it should in the vast emptiness of the palace. She paused outside the private gallery where the royal jewels were kept, a place usually reserved for curators and high-level staff. The Windsor legacy ring sat inside a secure glass case, bathed in soft light, its facets sparkling like a promise she had long coveted. This was not just any piece of jewelry, it was a symbol, a relic tied to Princess Diana, and by extension, to the story and legacy of her late husband. Yet for Camilla, it represented something immediate, tangible, the seed capital her son needed to finally open his high-end restaurant. She glanced around, noting the absence of guards in the main hall and the faint hum of security cameras overhead. Every detail mattered. One wrong move, one glance from the wrong person, and everything would collapse. Her pulse quickened. The thrill of the plan mingled with the deep, gnawing fear. She reminded herself, this was for her son. Everything she was about to do, every risk she was taking, was justified in her mind. Sliding the door open silently, Camilla stepped into the gallery, the soft carpet muffling her movements. She approached the display, her fingers brushing lightly over the polished wood surrounding the case. She could see the ring now, closer than ever before, each reflection catching the golden light and mocking her patience of the past week. Her mind raced, the money, the restaurant, the dream. It all depended on this single action. Carefully, she worked to disable the subtle locks on the display, each click sounding unnaturally loud in the otherwise silent room. The seconds felt like hours, stretching with unbearable tension. Her breath caught in her throat when a draft brushed against her neck. But it was only the palace's heating system responding to the evening chill. Finally, when the case opened, and her fingers closed around the Windsor legacy ring, it was heavier than she remembered, almost as if the weight of history itself pressed against her palm. She held it for a moment, savoring the victory, feeling a surge of exhilaration. Yet even in that instant of triumph, fear coursed through her veins. What if someone saw? What if this single act of ambition became the scandal she had feared for years? She pushed the thoughts aside. The risk was necessary, the reward was too important. Camilla moved carefully to secure the ring within a small, discreet pouch hidden in the folds of her gown. Every movement was precise, rehearsed in her mind 1,000 times. Her heart raced, her hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to maintain composure. She had rehearsed this night in every conceivable scenario, anticipating guards, staff, even the unpredictable footfalls of family members. And then she heard it. A step, familiar, deliberate, the echo of a polished shoe against the marble floor. Her blood ran cold. William. Her mind screamed silently, calculating, weighing options. Should she hide, flee, or feign innocence if caught. The step grew closer, its rhythm unmistakable, a sound that now carried the weight of inevitable confrontation. Camilla froze, the pouch pressing against her side, her eyes fixed on the shadow stretching across the gallery floor. Every instinct screamed at her. The moment of choice had arrived. She could feel the tension coiling within her chest, the excitement of the theft entwined with the sheer terror of discovery. Her pulse was a drumbeat, a countdown to exposure, each second stretching endlessly. William's figure appeared at the gallery entrance, and the room seemed to shrink around her. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met. In that gaze, she saw recognition, disapproval, and the potential for an unraveling that would touch the very heart of Buckingham Palace. Camilla's mind raced, spinning out excuses, lies, and reasoning. But she knew none of them could erase what was happening now. In that suspended second, the palace itself seemed to hold its breath. The glittering chandeliers reflected the tension in the room. The polished floors mirrored the unspoken stakes, and the Windsor legacy ring, so small, so deceptively delicate, was the pivot upon which the evening's drama would turn. Every heartbeat counted, every breath was a gamble. And as the echo of William's footsteps grew louder, the room was filled with a silent understanding. This act, no matter the outcome, would change everything. The calculated stealth, the careful planning, the audacity of taking what was never hers by right, it all led to this single, irrevocable point. Camilla, holding the ring, realized that the coming confrontation would not just test her nerve, but would ripple across the palace, the family, and the legacy of a crown that weighed heavier than any jewel. The gallery remained silent for a moment longer, the ring glinting ominously in her hand, as both mother and son prepared to step into a collision that would define the days ahead. One misstep, one glance, one word, and the course of Buckingham Palace's history could be altered forever. It was exactly 8:45 p.m. on September 30th, 2025. The golden light in Buckingham Palace's gallery had dimmed slightly, giving the room a quiet, tense glow. William had returned to the room, intent on retrieving a personal memento of his late mother, a symbol of the woman who had shaped his childhood and whose memory he still held sacred. He expected silence and stillness, perhaps the soft tick of a clock, but what he found instead made his heart stop. Camilla stood near the display case, her fingers curled around the Windsor legacy ring, the very jewel that had been his mother's cherished legacy. For a heartbeat, William froze, the disbelief washing over him. The room, which moments ago had seemed empty and secure, now felt suffocating, each shadow a potential witness to what he was seeing. His voice, low at first, trembled with rising fury. "Stepmother, this is my mother's legacy. How could you take it?" The words erupted from him like a storm, echoing off the high ceilings, filling every corner with a mix of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. His eyes burned with indignation, scanning Camilla's face for a hint of remorse, any acknowledgement that she understood the weight of what she had done. Camilla's face went pale, a flicker of panic crossing her features. Her carefully constructed calm cracked, and her voice wavered as she tried to find the right words. "William, I only wanted to help my son. This isn't what you think. I didn't mean—" Her explanation faltered, each word stumbling over the next, as if the very air had thickened around her, making honesty and persuasion equally impossible. William stepped closer, his eyes narrowing, jaw set. "Help your son? This is not help. Camilla, this is theft. This is disrespecting my mother, her memory, everything she stood for. You can't just take what doesn't belong to you." His hands gestured sharply, the motion punctuating every syllable, his anger palpable, almost tangible, filling the gallery with its intensity. Camilla's panic deepened. She gripped the ring tighter, the only thing anchoring her in that moment. Her mind raced, trying to construct a defense, a justification that could possibly sway William. I, I thought I was doing the right thing. Just one night, just to make it possible for my son. He deserves this chance." Her words hung in the room, fragile, unconvincing, met with nothing but William's unrelenting glare. Before the tension could escalate further, Charles entered, drawn by the raised voices and unmistakable tension. His eyes widened as he took in the scene. William, fiery with anger, and Camilla, pale and trembling, clutching the Windsor legacy ring like a shield. His voice, though calm, carried the strain of trying to mediate a situation spiraling out of control. "Camilla, this has gone too far," he said, his tone tight with frustration and concern. "William, please, stay calm." William's glare shifted to Charles, a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Father, how can this happen under our roof? How could you allow this?" His voice broke slightly, the raw emotion of betrayal mingling with his righteous fury. Every word was heavy with the weight of personal history, grief, and the memory of a mother he still loved. Charles's gaze shifted between the two, trying to find the balance, the words that could temper the storm. "I did not allow this. Camilla, you must understand the gravity of your actions. William, I ask you to listen, to hear me." But his words barely registered. The room was charged, each syllable vibrating with unspoken accusations, with tension that could snap at any moment. Camilla's panic became almost visible, her breathing quick, shallow. She looked from William to Charles and back again, searching desperately for a way to mend what was unraveling. I only wanted to help," she whispered, a tear threatening to fall. Her ambition, her determination to secure a future for her son, now collided with the emotional storm she had never anticipated. William's voice, loud and sharp, cut through the haze of excuses. "Help? By taking my mother's ring? By betraying her memory? This is not help. Camilla, this is deceit. This is manipulation. Do you even understand what you've done?" Each word struck with precision, leaving Camilla's defenses crumbling further. The gallery, once a place of calm and reflection, now felt like a courtroom, each person a witness and judge. The ring itself seemed to pulse in Camilla's hand, a small, cold reminder of the risk she had taken. She realized, in that instant, that the action she thought would secure her son's dream had now ignited a storm of family conflict that could have lasting repercussions. Charles stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on Camilla's shoulder, both to steady her and to assert some control over the situation. "Camilla, listen to me. This, this is not just about your intentions. You have crossed a line. William, you must try to understand the emotions involved. But the line has been crossed, and we must address it calmly." But calm had fled the room. William shook his head, a mixture of despair and fury etched into every feature. I cannot just accept this. This is my mother, her memory, and you violated it. Do you even see what you've done?" Camilla's hand faltered on the ring, the weight of the confrontation pressing down on her. Her mind, once so focused on ambition and necessity, now spun with fear and regret. The argument had escalated beyond anything she had anticipated. The consequences were no longer theoretical. The palace, the family, the legacy, it all hung in a precarious balance. For a tense moment, silence fell, the air thick with unspoken judgments. Then the storm of voices rose again, sharper, more urgent, signaling that this confrontation was far from over. The echoes of betrayal, fear, and indignation would carry beyond these walls, into the halls of Buckingham, into the public eye, and into a history that would remember this night for years to come. The confrontation had begun. The battle lines were drawn, and every glance, every word, every movement would shape the path forward. The Windsor legacy ring, small and glittering, had become the center of a familial earthquake, its theft a spark that would ignite scandal, division, and a reckoning that none of them could ignore. The aftermath of September 30th, 2025, settled over Buckingham Palace like a heavy, suffocating fog. Camilla, once confident and commanding, now moved through the gilded halls with a caution that bordered on fear. The Windsor legacy ring, the jewel that had sparked an unprecedented scandal, was returned to its display under the watchful eyes of the royal family, each gesture weighed with tension and silent judgment. The gallery, once a place of admiration and celebration, now bore witness to an act that had shaken the very foundation of family trust. The room was quiet except for the soft click of the glass case as Camilla reluctantly placed the ring back in its velvet cushion. Her hands trembled, betraying the anxiety that had settled deep within her chest. She dared not meet anyone's gaze, knowing each look was a silent reprimand, a reflection of disapproval she could not argue with. Charles stood nearby, attempting to navigate the treacherous emotional waters, but the strain was evident in the tight line of his mouth and the subtle tension in his posture. From the corners of the room, other family members watched in silence, their expressions carefully neutral, yet undeniably cold. Invitations to events, previously a routine courtesy, had begun to vanish from Camilla's calendar. Committee discussions that once included her insight now occurred without her input. Even the simplest interactions were met with polite detachment, a deliberate distancing that left her increasingly isolated. Every handshake was brief, every smile measured, as if the palace itself had enacted a quarantine against her presence. Charles tried, in his own reserved way, to maintain some semblance of normalcy. "Camilla, let's try to move forward," he said softly, his voice tinged with awkwardness. "We must focus on the family, on stability." But the words fell flat, like a balm on an open wound. The rupture had been made public, at least within the walls of Buckingham, and attempts at reconciliation seemed almost laughable against the backdrop of betrayal, fear, and mistrust. William observed the scene with a mix of vindication and caution. Part of him felt relief that his mother's legacy was restored, her memory honored once more. Yet the shadow of the evening's events lingered. Trust, once fractured, is never easily repaired. He watched Camilla retreat down the hall, shoulders hunched, every step measured to avoid drawing attention, and could not help but feel the delicate balance between forgiveness and vigilance teetering on the edge. Camilla's mind raced with scenarios and justifications. She had acted for her son, she reminded herself, yet the cost was staggering. The social isolation, the cold stares, the whispered conversations that followed her down corridors, these were consequences she had not fully anticipated. The palace, a place of order and ceremony, now felt like a cage of judgment, every step a reminder of the misstep that had brought her here. Charles attempted to intervene subtly, seeking to ease tensions during a family gathering that evening. "We should all remember our roles," he said gently, though the effort was strained. "The incident is behind us, in part. Let us not allow it to overshadow our duties." His attempt at diplomacy was met with polite nods, but the ice that had settled among the family remained unthawed. Camilla, sensing the lingering disapproval, withdrew further into herself, recognizing that influence, respect, and trust were commodities she had squandered in a single night. William, while partially comforted by the restitution of his mother's ring, maintained a vigilant stance. Every gesture from Camilla was scrutinized, every word measured. The balance of power, respect, and familial hierarchy had shifted, and he knew that any lapse, any misstep, could reopen the wounds inflicted by the evening's scandal. The memory of their confrontation, William realized, would serve as both shield and sword, a reminder that the legacy of Princess Diana remained untouchable, defended fiercely by those who loved her. Meanwhile, rumors whispered through the palace like an invisible current, touching even the most discreet corners. The scandal, confined for the moment within the family, had left ripples in its wake. Camilla's reputation, carefully cultivated over years, was now under scrutiny by those she once counted as allies. Invitations were rescinded, casual conversations turned curt, and the unspoken consensus was clear. She had crossed a line that could not easily be forgotten. Camilla moved cautiously from room to room, acutely aware of each pair of eyes that might judge her, each smile that might mask subtle scorn. The weight of isolation pressed heavily upon her, each encounter a reminder of the delicate social fabric she had unraveled. Even Charles, despite his attempts to mediate, could not shield her entirely from the consequences. The palace, a symbol of unity and tradition, now reflected her misstep in its halls of gold and marble. In the quiet moments, Camilla wrestled with the duality of her actions, intention versus impact. She had sought to provide, to secure her son's future. Yet in doing so, she had ignited a familial and institutional rupture that extended far beyond the simple taking of a ring. The balance of power, affection, and influence within the palace had shifted, and she felt the sting of isolation as a constant, almost physical presence. The night wore on, and as Camilla retired to her quarters, she was acutely aware that the story did not end here. Within the palace, the rift between her and the other members of the family was undeniable. Outside the gilded walls, the public and the press would soon learn of the scandal, magnifying the humiliation and cementing the narrative of betrayal and ambition. The isolation she faced within Buckingham Palace was merely the first wave. The coming storm of public scrutiny promised to be far harsher, unrelenting, and impossible to ignore. By the end of the evening, a new order had been established within the palace walls. Camilla, once a figure of influence and power, now moved in cautious steps, under watchful eyes, aware that every word, every glance, and every action was being silently judged. Charles, despite his best efforts, could not undo the fracture. William, while reassured in part, remained vigilant, a guardian of his mother's memory and a sentinel against any further transgressions. The night closed on Buckingham Palace, but the reverberations of September 30th, 2020 had only just begun. In the quiet corridors, the echoes of betrayal, embarrassment, and fractured trust lingered, a prelude to the public storm that would soon engulf the family, the palace, and Camilla herself. The Windsor legacy ring, now returned to its rightful place, had ignited a chain of events that would test loyalties, strain relationships, and remind everyone that even in the gilded halls of royalty, no act of deceit goes unnoticed or unpunished. On May 2nd, 2025, the quiet ambitions of Camilla's son met an abrupt and unyielding reality. The plan to open a luxurious, high-end restaurant had been conceived with dreams of culinary prestige, fine dining, and a promise of prosperity. But the absence of the promised $1 million from Charles was a crushing blow. Without the financial backing, the project could not move forward. The empty plans, the envisioned decor, the carefully crafted menu, all of it remained confined to sketches and hopeful discussions. Camilla, who had envisioned her son stepping into a new chapter of success, felt a deep, simmering disappointment. She had tried to secure funds from Charles on September 25th, 2020, but his refusal left her with no choice but to contemplate desperate measures, culminating in the infamous incident with the Windsor legacy ring. Now, months later, the consequences of that failure were laid bare. The restaurant remained unopened, its doors figuratively closed, and the promise of a thriving venture evaporated into a haze of frustration and regret. As whispers spread, the story reached the public. Media outlets picked up the narrative of the ambitious restaurant that never was. Coupled with Camilla's controversial actions involving the royal ring, headlines blared across social media: "Royal family drama blocks culinary dreams." Camilla's scandal shadows son's ambition, and a $1 million promise unfulfilled. The public, already captivated by the drama within Buckingham, now had another angle to scrutinize. Reactions were swift and unrelenting. Social media platforms became a storm of outrage, ridicule, and sharp commentary. Users scolded Camilla, equating her misjudgment with a betrayal of trust. Comparing her unfavorably to the late Princess Diana, many expressed disbelief that such a scandal could directly impact a seemingly innocuous venture like a restaurant. The comments were merciless. "Don't even bother opening a restaurant. No one would dare set foot in it," wrote one, while another chimed in, "Royal missteps leave real consequences. Stop dreaming." The virtual condemnation soon seeped into the tangible world. Investors withdrew any interest. Partners reconsidered arrangements, and suppliers canceled plans, unwilling to associate with a venture tainted by scandal. The aura of exclusivity and prestige that Camilla had hoped to cultivate evaporated. Her son, who had once imagined greeting guests in a bustling dining room, now faced an empty, silent space, the walls echoing with what could have been. For Camilla, the weight of the situation pressed harder than ever. She had acted with the best intentions for her son, believing she was facilitating his success. Yet, the combination of royal politics, public scrutiny, and the failure to secure legitimate funding had turned her intentions into a public spectacle of humiliation. The ring incident, meant to be a solution, had instead amplified the fallout. She felt the sting of public judgment, a sharp reminder that ambition divorced from prudence and transparency can devastate both personal and familial reputation. Her son, for his part, wrestled with a mix of frustration and embarrassment. Dreams of entrepreneurship, of crafting a space where culinary excellence could shine, were now entangled in a narrative of scandal and failure. Each rejected investor, each canceled partnership, each derisive comment online compounded the sense of hopelessness. He realized that the failure was not merely financial, it was reputational, societal, and deeply personal. Even within Buckingham Palace, the incident lingered as a quiet tension. The royal family, aware of the public scrutiny, offered little in the way of solace. Invitations that might have once brought opportunities were now conspicuously absent. The support networks that typically buoyed members through ambitious endeavors were muted, cautious, or completely withdrawn. Camilla found herself navigating the treacherous waters of family politics and public opinion simultaneously, acutely aware that her missteps had repercussions far beyond the palace walls. The story of the failed restaurant became a cautionary tale, referenced in both news columns and private conversations. It highlighted the intricate balance between ambition and propriety, between personal desire and public expectation. Camilla had aimed to secure her son's future, to provide a launching pad for success. Instead, she encountered a stark lesson in consequence, that the actions of those connected to power and prestige are never isolated, and that public perception can crush even the most carefully laid plans. By mid-morning, the narrative had fully infiltrated social media feeds, trending across platforms and igniting conversations about privilege, responsibility, and consequence. Memes circulated, mocking the irony of a royal-fueled dream derailed by a lack of funds and tainted by scandal. Analysts and commentators debated the broader implications for the royal family, questioning how internal family dynamics could so directly impact external ventures. Camilla, following the unfolding storm, felt a mix of regret, anger, and helplessness. Each tweet, post, and article served as a relentless mirror, reflecting the magnitude of the fallout. In private, the disappointment was palpable. The son, once brimming with enthusiasm, had retreated into quiet frustration. Camilla recognized that no apology or explanation could undo the damage. The restaurant, symbolic of hope and ambition, had been rendered impossible, a casualty of both circumstance and scandal. The dream of culinary success was suspended indefinitely, overshadowed by the public's unflinching scrutiny and the lingering memory of royal misjudgment. By the end of the day, a sobering realization settled over Camilla. Actions taken in the pursuit of ambition, especially within the unyielding gaze of royalty and public opinion, carry consequences that ripple far beyond initial intent. The failure of the restaurant was not merely a personal or financial disappointment. It was a profound lesson in responsibility, accountability, and the harsh reality that privilege does not shield one from public judgment or familial repercussions. The events of May 2nd, 2025 crystallized a narrative that would endure beyond the immediate scandal. Ambition without prudence, even with the best intentions, can collapse under the twin pressures of public opinion and internal scrutiny. Camilla faced the stark reality of watching her son's dreams dissolve, her own reputation tarnished, and the public's judgment unrelenting. In that moment, the palace walls seemed both protective and confining, a gilded cage highlighting the unforgiving nature of life within and beyond royalty. The failed restaurant, the relentless social media backlash, and the inescapable public scrutiny served as a final, indelible reminder. In the royal sphere, every action is magnified, every ambition observed, and every misstep remembered. Camilla's intentions may have been rooted in maternal desire, but the outcome underscored a simple truth. The path to success, particularly under the public eye, is fragile, contingent, and inextricably tied to the judgments of both family and society. This story serves as a stark reminder. Ambition unchecked by prudence and desire tainted by misjudgment carries consequences far beyond the immediate moment. Power, privilege, and personal decisions are inextricably linked, and a single misstep can ripple through lives and reputations alike. So we leave you with a question. If you were in Camilla's shoes or William's, how would you navigate this delicate balance of loyalty, ambition, and morality? The Windsor legacy ring, now returned to its rightful place, gleams softly as the light fades, symbolizing both restitution and the enduring weight of choices made.